And I thank the President once more, and I would like to welcome him to Egypt, and let me give him the floor.
His Excellency,
Your Excellency President Sisi,
and the ministers who are here,
honorable ministers,
on behalf of our delegation,
on behalf of our delegation, we would like to thank you for inviting us to Egypt and to have this dialogue. I did not come to Egypt for a long time, and the last time I visited Egypt was when I attended a conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and this was a long time ago. First of all,
many gardens.
in our language, Egypt, the word Misr, Egypt, means the garden and the gardens. So here we are talking about the gardens. If it is one garden, we call it Musedi. If it's more than one, we call it Misidi. And this is our language. In Uganda and the Great Lakes, we believe that they are both linked to Egypt through the river Nile since old times. And politically, we started getting close to Egypt after 1952, at the time of late President Nasser when he assumed presidency in Egypt. And before that, there was no political contact between us and Egypt. Yet Nasser, the late president, believed in the nation and he believed in the African cooperation. So he worked with our leaders and the presidents in the African countries like Neriye, Dobqita, Koroma, and a number of African presidents. They all cooperated together, and Egypt, under the leadership of late President Nasser, was supporting independence movements against colonization. And in the National Conference for Uganda, one of our political parties had an office here in Egypt, and the Egyptian minister Mohammed Fayq was responsible for these efforts for cooperation with African countries. And now I started working with different leaders in Africa at the time of President Mubarak, and I worked with Boutros Ghali, and we discussed a number of important issues back then. As for the issue of the River Nile, I discussed with His Excellency the President this matter, and we said that maybe we need to find a different approach to deal with it. Egypt has historical rights, and Egypt's approach in dealing with this matter is based on the historical rights and the agreements that were signed at the time of the British colonization. And the others say, what about us? So if we broaden the discussion, I think we would be able to find a solution. And by talking to others, we can say that the global needs of all the countries in the Nile Basin are for achieving prosperity for everyone first, and within this prosperity we need electricity to be provided to all countries, irrigation in all countries. And of course, we need water. So if we would put this into consideration in documents, regardless of the other approaches that would be adopted, we can look for the scientific means to achieve that. And by that, the problem won't be as big as it seems today. It is related to the approach of dealing with the matter. And prosperity can be achieved also through business and different activities. Egypt has a great edge because it overlooks the Mediterranean Sea, and Uganda is linked to Egypt through and via the River Nile. And now some say that Uganda is a landlocked country, but it is not landlocked. At a certain moment, I used to say that Uganda is not a landlocked country, but it is semi-landlocked, as it is connected to the Mediterranean Sea. It can reach the Mediterranean through the River Nile, because the River Nile can take us to the Mediterranean. And also the British used to go to Alexandria through ships. So we are not a landlocked country. And at a certain moment we were landlocked because of El-Bashir. But now I don't know who is keeping us in Uganda and cannot connect it to other countries, be it Hamiti or others. Anyways, the River Nile can connect us to the Mediterranean Sea, and I discussed this with His Excellency the President. I talked about the importance of the River Nile, and at the bilateral level we have very good relations with His Excellency the President and Egypt, and the President provided us with the support we need for the vaccines against diseases, and the President approved constructing a factory for the production of vaccines in Uganda. And generally speaking, I would like to emphasize the importance of a business center, because business has to do with two things: the production of commodities and services, and the consumers who purchase those services and commodities. If the leaders do not see how can we produce these commodities and services and market them, we won't be able to achieve prosperity. If I do not purchase what you produce, then I won't support your prosperity. I support your prosperity from my own pocket when I buy what you produce, and when you buy what I produce, you are supporting me. All leaders in Africa need to understand that this is the only means to achieve prosperity in Africa, the support of commodities and services through this economic approach in a mutual manner. And also His Excellency the President talked about the importance of business, and this means that we need to see how can we have joint investment in production, and how can we achieve this in the two countries and with other African countries or other countries outside Africa. By doing so, we would be able to get out of the poverty cycle, and with the production of commodities and services and selling them, we are creating job opportunities, and we are employing people, and we can pay the electricity bill, the tax bill. This is how we can achieve prosperity. how can we achieve prosperity unless we are moving? If we stand still without production, we won't be able to do those things. The error that was made by a number of the African countries in the past was that they used to focus on trade with US and European countries. And as we have seen, this was a very risky matter because they might change their stances and block your road. So then you want to be able to access the market. There are more than 100 million population in Egypt, and I would like to purchase products. And in Uganda we have 50 million population, so we have a very large population in all African countries, and they can produce products and sell these products. We have 1.5 billion population in Africa. We are more than the population of China, and this population is expected to increase over the coming years, so we have a lot of potentials here in this continent. And I am glad that President El-Sisi is looking at the matter of business from both sides, production, consumption. And I'm glad to be here in Egypt, and I am glad to receive this kind invitation, as we had very important talks. Despite the difficulties in other countries, we've discussed also matters in Libya, Palestine, and Sudan. Thank you. Of the historical relations between both our countries and brotherly nations that are linked to the river Nile, and they have long decades of solidarity and cooperation in different fields. Ladies and gentlemen, the bilateral Ugandan relations have witnessed a great development recently that reflects the close interests between both countries. And I emphasized during our talks today with His Excellency President Museveni, Egypt's keenness on upgrading relations with Uganda to new horizons, and the fact that we are looking forward to this visit and that it would be a new starting point towards a real partnership between the two countries. Today we've witnessed signing a number of memos of understanding in the field of technical cooperation, management of water resources, agricultural and food cooperation, as well as investment and mutual exemption of visas for those who have official passports, and in the field of diplomatic cooperation to support establishing a diplomatic Institute for Uganda. And we discussed also today ways to enforce economic cooperation and to extend trade exchange between the two countries. We agreed on accelerating forming a joint business council, as well as encouraging visits between the business communities in both countries to achieve mutual interests. And in this context, the joint business forum would be held at the sidelines of this visit to get to know the investment opportunities in the two countries, as well as taking executive measures in this context. We discussed also opportunities for cooperation in the field of training, capacity building, and we emphasized our keenness on moving forward with cooperation in the field of dealing with veterinary diseases, in addition to cooperation in the field of energy and insecurity. We intend to continue our cooperation due to the last visit for the head of the popular Ugandan commander, and we agreed on holding annually the military council's meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, I shared with President Museveni visions regarding the River Nile, the channel of life for both our countries, and we agreed that the optimum way to deal between the Nile Valley countries should be built on enhancing cooperation to achieve common interest as well as joint action to protect this vital resource and develop it, as well as taking into consideration the interest of everyone and not to harm anyone according to international law standards. As mentioned by His Excellency President Museveni, with his great wisdom, without protecting the environment of the Nile Basin, we will have nothing to share. Accordingly, I confirm to President Museveni our full support to the efforts of development in Uganda and the rest of the brotherly countries in the Nile Basin, and the fact that we are ready to contribute to financing Ongululu Dam between Uganda and Kenya through the mechanism launched by Egypt to invest in infrastructure projects in the Nile Basin with a preliminary investment of $100 million. And I would like to announce that we signed today a memorandum of understanding in the field of integrated water resources management to build on the extended cooperation for over 20 years between the two countries to protect the environment of the River Nile and to develop its resources with a total value of $6 million, to emphasize our strong commitment to supporting development in Uganda and the rest of the Nile Basin countries. In this context, I confirmed our confidence in the constructive role played by Uganda to lead the consultation regarding the Nile Basin Initiative to achieve agreement and conformity between the Nile Basin countries for mutual interest. And I heightened the fact that Egypt is against unilateral actions in the eastern Nile Basin that should be a source for development rather than conflict. And he would be distracted if he thinks that Egypt is going to turn a blind eye to its interests. And we will take all the legal standards and all the legal rules at the international level according to the international law to protect our interests. And let me stop here, because this was a lengthy discussion between me and President Museveni due to his wisdom and his long experience, and also due to the importance of this issue we're tackling. In fact, we agreed both that water is a very important issue and development is important as well, and our stance was clear from the beginning. We said that we would never be against the development of our partners and our brothers in the Nile Basin countries. We have no problem with that. We have only one problem, that this development we are talking about should not have a negative impact on the share of water that reaches Egypt. And the discussion that we had with the president, and I found that he fully understood this view. The president told me that we or you, or should we all be together? I told him, we all together, of course. We are all together. So I told him, then there is no difference between us. He told me, I want to tell you that the volume of water that falls on the Nile Basin, be it the White Nile or the Blue Nile, according to the scientific standards, say that 1,600 cubic meters of water fall annually on the two Niles. And this is the part of water that goes to the forests, the swamps, the ponds, part used for agriculture, parts evaporates, and parts go to underground water, and very small volume goes to the White and Blue Niles, which is about the 85 million cubic meters we're talking about. So if we say that these 1,600 and the 85, then the 85 is only 4% of this volume of water we're talking about. What does this mean? When I ask for this water and this volume of water to reach Egypt and Sudan so that we can survive because we do not have any other water resource, by saying so, am I against development in the Nile Basin countries, or am I against them benefiting from this water for agriculture or electricity generation? No, of course, and I'm emphasizing this here in front of His Excellency the President and you all. I'm telling the Egyptians that our stance from the beginning was that we said that we are not against development. We did not even talk about share division of this water, because if we talk about fair division, that we're talking about 1,600 million cubic meters. We're talking about only 4 or 5% of the 1,600 billion cubic meters of water that we're talking about. So this is so important. We are not saying we or them, Egypt or Sudan only. We are saying we all together. We should all together survive, cooperate for the welfare and the development of our countries. That's why I'm confirming again that this matter of water is so important for Egypt, because we do not have any other source. And the president told me, do you know what's the meaning of Egypt in our language? I asked him, what does it mean? He said, it means the garden. Okay. This garden is a garden because of the water we receive from the river Nile. We do not have rainfall. So this is the share that we receive. So no one can think that we would give up upon it, because if we do so, we're giving up our life, and this would never happen. I just wanted to mention this point. And the volume of understanding that I found was great, and we depend on the 7 parties committee to enable us to reach an agreement for the benefit of everyone and for further cooperation between the Nile Basin countries, because there were other countries that had similar problems and they were able to reach an agreement for everyone, and we want to do the same. I would just like to say, Your Excellency, the President, he who has rainfall does not feel for he who does not have water. In Egypt, we do not have rain, and the Egyptians are so worried and so cautious about water. And I would like to tell the Egyptians that I totally understand this, and I'm responsible along with the leaders, my brothers, like President Museveni, to find a solution that does not impact the lives of Egyptians. Egypt is under a lot of pressure in this aspect, and maybe water is one of this pressure campaign to achieve other purposes, and we fully realize this, and we are trying as much as we can to deal with that. And I'm emphasizing here before the President that we are against the intervention in the internal affairs of others. We are against conspiracies against others. We are against construction, and we are for construction and are against destruction. And we have very long years for cooperating with the countries. Once more, I would like to reassure the Egyptians that this matter would be settled, and we would never allow harming the water that is needed by 105 million Egyptians and 10 million guests. Here, I would like to reiterate the importance of the Egyptian awareness, and this is the main pillar that I depend on in facing any challenge or any imminent threat. I do not want to be lengthy. I would just like to say at the end, I thank you all, and I thank the President once more, and I would like to welcome him to Egypt.